Hey, Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really value your time. And every single week, I try to put out inspirational, educational, helpful content so that you can supercharge your campaign going into the new year, going into the next month, going into whatever period that you're entering. And so many people I think that are listening to this show really are at different stages, right? So whatever stage you're at, whether you've already had a successful campaign or a few of them, I try to make these useful for you and try to put this into at least a context that's going to help you directly with your crowdfunding campaign, to help you raise more money, to help you launch faster, or to really just give you that roadmap, right? That you need to, a step-by-step process in order to get something out there. So a lot of the times we'll bring on many different types of categories, right? And like today, this entrepreneur was able to launch 4 different campaigns. And one of the things I think that's important is that when you are studying a process, it's so important to look at many different examples of success. So like I'll bring on technology, gadgets, and gizmos and physical products, but we'll also talk about games and card games and board games and tabletops and startups and, so much stuff under the sun. Talk about creative projects like books, children's books, film projects, theater projects. And that's really what Kickstarter is about. It's about understanding the different categories. It's about seeing how you can be successful in each of them and how so many of the techniques can be applied across the board. So to me, this is kind of like a unified theory, if you want to say it that way, where depending on which category you're in, as long as you apply the things that are going to work when it comes to human psychology and creating a great product, you can get your project funded. There is nothing stopping you, my friends. And I think today's episode is a great example of how someone was able to absolutely smash their goal, raise over $280,000 for a video game, and do this and attract over 1,400 backers, right? So video games are something that I think we usually think of like big studios releasing. But, this story, this is a great example, I think, of how you, as an independent creator, can use this platform or this tool to be able to get cool stuff out there into the world. One of the other things I want to really quickly mention before we get into today's class, I guess, or you want to call it the podcast. One of the other things I really quickly want to mention is that if you're interested in booking a one-on-one coaching call with me, I'm going to share a link for you at the end of the podcast where you can do that. But if you're not yet at that stage, I got a great free course for you on crowdfunding that you can check this out. And this will just kind of walk you through how to run one of these campaigns. So you can go to crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter, 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 and you can enroll in that free Kickstarter course, and it'll start sending you some emails to get you up to date on how to do one of these campaigns. Also, one other quick announcement. If you have a little bit of uncertainty around PR, and by that I mean getting media attention and trying to get media hits and influencers to notice your project, I also have a great course for free on that as well. So that link is crowdcrux.com/PR, crowdcrux.com/PR, crowdcrux.com/PR. And we've been having obviously some episodes recently talking about PR. So I think this could be really useful for you if that is an area where you think you will struggle with. But that being said, let's dive into today's podcast interview and learn how Mythic Legions Tactics was able to absolutely blow past their goal and raise 6 figures on Kickstarter. It's coming up right after this. If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist, fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Today we have a killer Kickstarter campaigner on the show. Over 100K funded in 3 hours. Insane. This creator has attracted more than 900 backers for Mythic Legions Tactics. He's also run a bunch of other campaigns for Horsemen Studios. This is an incredible project you're going to learn about in just a second. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We'd love to get started. You can maybe just describe to listeners a bit about your project and who it's for.
Sure. So Mythic Legions Tactics is a the first video game for the Horsemen Studios, who have been making an action figure line called Mythic Legions. They started that action figure line, years and years ago, and they've been releasing more than 200 different action figures of highest quality ever since. Four Horsemen are the guys behind the original He-Man toys. They did all the Spawn toys for McFarlane Toys back in the day. So they've been doing this for decades, and this is their first original property. And they've been looking to try and figure out how to expand that IP into other regions. And that's when, the idea of, hey, let's do, animations, let's do video games, that type of stuff came along. So a video game made, kind of the most initial sense, primarily because it allows them to tell the story, allows them to, show off the characters, the customizations, let people get more immersed in the IP.
And when it comes to you and your involvement there, what kind of role do you play in the project?
I am the CTO and Director of Development for Great Hall Game Studios, which is a partnership with the Four Horsemen and another entity called Always Imagine. My job is to, architect the game and oversee its overall development. My background is, game architecture, which is a different type of thing than game development. Architecture is making sure that the game is, correctly designed, correctly involved, and make sure that it's of the highest quality and has that initial plan. I'm also writing some of the story and being involved in a lot of the, overall development in regards to its story, gameplay, and final overall look and feel.
Very cool. And I see here also Four Horsemen Studios has launched a few other campaigns. Were you also involved with those Kickstarters?
Yes and no. I was involved with helping them plan them, but I didn't work with them on them. Those were before, they were just action figure stuff. Part of the action figure side of stuff is, they knew how to, make their campaign grow, which every time they'd get a stretch goal, they would unlock another action figure to allow people to buy, which would just, expand the Kickstarter on and on.
Totally. I mean, they've been some pretty successful campaigns, and even with this one, it looks like you guys absolutely crushed it here. So in terms of the ways that this is different, for those that are just kind of listening, what would you say some of the other games that people might be into would be into this one? Like, do you think you could just describe it a little bit for them who aren't familiar with the sort of the game style?
Sure. So tactics games are turn-based strategy games. They allow you to select every single character, choose their move, where they go, where they attack on this field so that you can try and out-strategize the AI or other player. Tactics games, some of the most famous ones are Final Fantasy Tactics, Tactics Ogre, even Gears Tactics is out. There's a good one out right now called, it actually uses the D&D 5e rule set. And it's on Steam right now. You can play it. It's really good. But we're, following in those kind of footsteps with making a turn-based tactics game.
Very cool. And kind of what made you decide to get Kickstarter involved in this picture? Why did you guys decide to go that route instead of just launching on your own site or doing with another site?
So Kickstarter brings a lot of momentum to a project. So, I first did my first Kickstarter back in, 2010, 2011, way back in the early days. And, back in those days, it was more indie creators and you had to really do a lot of the pushing, but it was more idea based back in those days. Kickstarter now is more, I wouldn't say a pre-ordering. It's more like you have to have your campaign more ready to go. It has to be a real thing. Because, back in the day, people were investing in ideas. Now people aren't as interested in the idea as the execution and making sure that the project itself is going to actually come to fruition. So risk management is a huge deal in Kickstarter. So having previously one campaign's already done, showing that you've completed those campaigns and delivered on them, showing that you have a very competent brand, showing that you have those risk mitigation factors are a big deal. Once you determine that your campaign can succeed on Kickstarter, then there's a strategy around how to do it.
Understood. I think another big component that you're kind of mentioning earlier was this idea of uniqueness, right?
Yes.
And not having just another cookie cutter project. What do you think really makes your project unique here in bringing it to the community?
there's a couple of different things. One is we are starting a game from an action figure line. So the campaign is not a single IP, it's multiple different ones. So we're bringing in toy people, we're bringing in IP people from the action figure line into the video game space. So we're bringing in multiple different avenues for the campaign instead of just saying, oh, only everybody who likes video games can support this campaign. So that's the first thing that's unique. The second thing is the game itself. We are trying to make very unique in our approach to it. The game itself has several unique, opportunities in it. First and foremost is most tactics games out there are built on either square or hex tiles, and then the game you just play through the tiles. We're actually making 3D realistic levels and putting the tactics turns on top of the realistic levels. So instead of you having to make a tactics game where everything is just that, single tile base and everything looks kind of uniform, ours are going to be fully 3D encapsulated environments that you can see storylines in, you can see, full cutscenes in, you can do all these visual customizations that are almost impossible in other games.
For sure. I think the other thing is really selling the backers on the imagination there and what is possible. At what point in time did you guys begin to introduce this to the fan base, which you've built up over time? Was this hey guys, we're going live next week? Or was it a couple of months ahead? When were you really starting that process?
So we announced the game last year. So back in November, December of last year, we started talking to the Mythic Legions fans and started getting them involved. In January, we actually ran a private campaign that was only to the Mythic Legions fans. It was run only on their side of things, and we wanted them to get them involved in the process and help us actually make this game. So we literally took our idea and said, okay, let's go see what the fans want us to make.
Yeah.
From there, what we did was took all of that feedback in that private campaign and said, okay, now we're going to make the actual game better and offer it in the public side of things so that it can be, instead of just the Mythic Legions action figure fans, it can be to everybody.
So were you kind of running your own crowdfunding campaign internally, or is it a feedback campaign? What do you mean by campaign?
Yeah, we actually ran a crowdfunding campaign, a private one that we built on our own back in January.
Interesting. That's really cool. Was it very similar to the one that is now, or is it more idea based, like you were talking about, the way it kind of more so got started in the early days?
So we did have visuals, but the visuals were, concepts. Hey, here's what we did the 3D character modeling. We did some of the level modeling, but it was all, more basic than what you see now. We had no cutscenes. We had no gameplay other than, hey, they moved on the grid and they would attack. There was no other pieces to it other than showing, here's our idea. Yeah. And here's what it could look like.
Got it. And were you also offering perks and rewards kind of common to the crowdfunding model, or was this just a support it and you get to share your feedback kind of thing?
No, we offered perks. So the game has elves and orcs in it. So we sold a couple of builder pack, action figure builder packs where you could build your own elf or build your own orc.
That's cool. Yeah.
And we sold those. But, towards the game itself, we mainly focused on, hey, you can put yourself in the game as an NPC. You can, see parts of the game early. You can have beta access. You can have your own input. You can get access into, the storyline process, that type of stuff.
That's really fascinating. I've actually never heard of someone doing that before. So just kind of one more follow-up question on that. Did you also have a funding goal, and how much were you trying to raise there, or what was the result of that?
Yeah, so our funding goal on that was 100 as well. We ended up raising over 250. That one went for about 5 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, I think. It was originally supposed to be a 2-week campaign, and we passed the goal early on, within about a week. And then all of the fans were like, no, keep extending it. I need more time, all this stuff. So because it was a private, we kept extending the time frame for it. And, we ended up doing like a 4.5 week campaign for it that was originally supposed to just be a 2 week one. But at the end of the day, it was more about making sure that the fans wanted the game and makes that it was something that was, going to be beneficial to the IP. And obviously it worked. I mean, we hit some stretch goals within that one. We unlocked some extra factions within the game that we weren't originally going to do. We were going to do those in this campaign instead, but they started upping and up, and then we're like, okay, well, let's start planning out the game a little bit more.
So when it comes to that, what makes you decide then to go even to Kickstarter, right? Why not just run the second one also on your own site there?
Well, so those are all action figure fans. They didn't have any game fans. Kickstarter allows us to reach out to the more broader market.
Makes sense.
So instead of just going to their fan base, we're going to their fan base and everybody else that's more game focused and trying to bring in those extra other people that Kickstarter brings visibility to.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, you guys are attacking it at a lot of different angles there. So one of the common things I think that, a lot of the campaigns that I talk with have a lack of is this preparation, right? And you guys are super on point with the preparation. How long does it really take to prepare for one of these campaigns? Is this like a 6 months prep? Is this a 3 month prep? What do you think you really need to prepare for one of these?
Well, so that's all about the funding you have beforehand, in my opinion. So I will say that let me break this down into two different categories. The private campaign, we had about $20,000 that we prepared the campaign with. It took us about 3 months to prepare for that campaign, and we did a really good job creating all the assets. Obviously, once we finished the private, we had a lot more money for the public. The public was originally supposed to happen in June, but then all the announcements from Xbox and PlayStation were going to happen. So we pushed it to July so we weren't drowned out in there. So when we started doing all the preparations, we put down a list of here's what we need to get done for the campaign, literally the moment we finished the other one. So the other campaign ended in February, and now it's July, early August. So we had about 5 months to prep. But in that 5 months, we essentially built the entire game. We hired a dev side of things. We have a group of about 12 developers that we're working with, and we built the actual game. So we took the extra route and the extra money to say, all right, we're not faking an IP. We're going to make this game. So the point of the public Kickstarter is to add more polish and add multiplayer features to the single player campaign that was originally funded.
Interesting. Yeah. And I mean, also, obviously, when it's public, you can also get a lot more discussion going, right? Outside of your own community there. And I would say, of all the things that I'm hearing from you, one of your strengths seems to really be that fan base that you've been able to cultivate over time. Do you have any thoughts on what really goes into building a tight-knit community like that of people that are passionate? How do you guys do that?
The Four Horsemen have their own fans from all of the work they've done for their professional careers. They did the original He-Man toys. They did the original Spawn toys. They do all, they do work for Hasbro. They do work for Mattel. They do work for large toy companies, even still. So everybody who knows their work, they launch their own IP and they start putting it out there to all the people who know them, who talk on, Facebook and, podcasting and all this stuff. And they've just built it up over time of, hey guys, here's our own stuff. And their own stuff is super high quality. Their action figures are, expensive, but they're these really extremely high-end action figures that are, this higher quality level that, brings its own fandom. So now these, high quality fans are like, well, what's next? Where else can this IP go? Yeah, they can continue just to release action figures, but now people want to know what's the story. What else can we do with them? Where else can we customize? So, one of the biggest components of this game is the customizer. You're going to be able to take we're basically call them digital action figures. You're basically going to take the digital action figure within the game and customize it and then be able to play with it.
Understood. So it sounds to me like Almost by just creating and doing things and putting out good work, that's honestly the best way to build a fan base. If you're trying to create a fan base without putting out any work, it's going to be super hard. People need to see what you're capable of and what you're able to produce. It sounds like that's really the key to building one.
Yeah, I mean, and they've done an amazing job over the years, and they just built up this, fan base over time, and it doesn't happen quickly. I mean, they've been doing it for decades.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. When I'm looking at your campaign here, so you guys have incredible artwork. You got a lot of great stuff going on. Do you have any other thoughts on advice that you would have for a beginner? They might look at your campaign and be like, this is phenomenal, but I don't know if I could do something quite like this. What advice do you usually give to a beginner who does have the game or prototype in that way and wants to go to Kickstarter? What kind of things can you share with them you think that they would find useful?
So, I mean, I've done small games that have no IP. Nobody understands all the ways to big ones like this that have huge IP behind them. The difference is understanding what's the best strategy of approach for your project. This project in particular, we have the action figure fans, we have the good backing, we have all of those different pieces. So our plan was we're going to have to be the same level of quality with the game as they are with the action figures if we're going to do a campaign. So our strategy from the beginning was this needs to look badass and it needs to have high quality. That isn't always the case with every game. Some of the games that are, pixel games or side-scrolling games, they just need to be showing, hey, we're having fun. A lot of the games that I've seen is people love really unique ideas. Like, hey, you're going to put out a new side-scroller. Hey, that's great. But it's a side-scroller that does X that makes it unique and it's fun to play. It's also, cheap or it's easy to get to. It offers this other unique multiplayer component. Whatever the case is, you can make a game campaign successful as long as you have some sort of hook.
And what role do you think the overall gaming community plays in this? Like, should you be actively reaching out to other game creators, or should you be engaging in different forums or groups? Do you guys do anything like that?
Our marketing strategy for this is we do work with influencers. However, most gaming influencers want to have the final product. They're not going to review a potential game unless it's from, okay, I know it's coming out from Sega, so I'll review it before they even have a copy. Gaming influencers are primarily people who play the games and then give commentary on it. What our strategy is to work more with the, Kickstarter side of influencers, to work with action figure influencers, to work with people that are more involved in like telling the story of how the games are made and how things are created instead of going to the game influencers themselves. So we're going to be on, a few of the places. We're going to be on Toy Galaxy. We're going to be on Pixel Dan. We're going to be on a few other influencer type things. We're coming out on Pocket Tactics with some other stuff as well. And then we're, just doing traditional Facebook ads and some other pushes into the groups of people who are like, hey, check out these campaigns.
Very cool. Very cool. I think you being able to also be seen among some of those influencers also helps as well with the credibility. If you're trying out something new, like you're making a whole new game from scratch. So that can definitely play into it as well. When it comes to this, like, you've been obviously killing it. I know you're working through the illness today and you have a bit of a cold there. What's the most rewarding aspect of your job right now, working with these different IP and kind of helping with the project there? What's the most rewarding part of this for you?
Seeing it all, be successful, to be honest. I mean, you put all this time and work into an idea and a strategy, and seeing that strategy, be successful, that's what's most rewarding. Getting to, the day after funding going, okay, great, now we're funded. Let's take a moment to enjoy that. That moment passes, now we're back into work. But that initial moment of saying, okay, now I can breathe a minute. Let me start focusing again. Let me go to that next level.
And for you, success would be you having essentially all this funding to now do cool new stuff with. Is it that you can now have people playing with the game around the world? What does like success mean to you?
So there's a lot of different unique pieces of this game that we are going to be introducing that aren't in any other games. So there are two main things that we're introducing in this game. One is a thing called Melded Classes, and I want to see if that strategy or unique feature goes off and even becomes something else in other games. So Melded Classes is the idea of you taking two different classes and merging them into one new class. So as an example, let's say you unlocked the classes for both a priest and a mage. You can meld those together and get what is called a blue mage. Blue mage is a combination of both of those together. But let's take a more extreme example. Let's say you wanted to merge a barbarian with a necromancer. Okay, you can now do a barbarian necromancer in the game. You could merge a thief and a druid. You could merge...
That would be an interesting combo.
I mean, merging a Templar with a necromancer. That just seems like crazy combinations. We basically are allowing people to merge classes together and get these other strange opportunities. The other thing that we're doing unique that I want to see if is also going to be successful is something called slot-based characters. Slot-based characters are the idea that this game is a non-pay-to-win game. So to make that possible, we had to do what are called slot-based characters. There are 5 different factions within the game. However, we didn't want people to have to start off at level 1 every single time they would start a new faction, or they wanted to do multiplayer. So instead, every time you level up your character, it's leveling up the slot. Meaning, if you level it up in one campaign, then you go play another campaign, and then you go play multiplayer, everything is leveling up that slot. Every skill you learn, everything that you do is affecting that slot regardless of where else you play.
Understood.
So, it's an element that I want to see that if other people like. So to me, success is about the story. It's about the mechanics. It's about the features. And if people don't like some of them, that's where I feel like I fail, because I'm the architect and I want to make sure that they like those features.
Got it. When it comes to crowdfunding and Kickstarter here, I mean, you've obviously been in the industry for a while and you've seen how it changed and how it is continuing to grow and evolve. What do you see as sort of the next step, or do you see any trends that you're noticing within the Kickstarter ecosystem or crowdfunding in general?
I think that there is a kind of missing set of pieces around integrating people into the process earlier and then even after a campaign is done. Right now, Kickstarter basically just says, okay, put up your campaign and then you're ready to go or not. They don't help you with the promotional stuff at the beginning. They don't help you set up your, like you said, your fan base. You have to have that and bring it to them, instead of them helping you make your fan base. I think that's a missed opportunity. And I do think that they will eventually start getting into fan base setups and allowing you to manage fan base systems within them. But I also think they're going to help eventually manage the communication after the fact, to where you bring the fans through the process of it being made. Because right now, after Kickstarter is done, yeah, you can send up comments and you can email everybody, but there's no place for you to really engage them and bring them through the process a little bit more. We have to do that outside of it.
The other question I have for you on that is, I think a lot of the times when people are doing a campaign, obviously it takes so much work, right? And when you do it successfully, there's also this like uplift towards the end of the project. You notice that with the test campaign you did, where people wanted to continue to back it and you like extended it, right? So one of the techniques for that is obviously Indiegogo in demand. Do you guys do anything around with that, or are you mainly maintaining the momentum on your own site and kind of pushing people there after the campaign?
So that's an interesting question. The answer is there's a strategy being discussed and extended. So after the campaign is over, there are two things that always have to happen. One is you need to get people into like a system like BackerKit, or to manage their, rewards. However, the BackerKit is to allow people to continue to buy that already backed it. But what about the people who didn't back it? So do you go into something like a, Indiegogo on demand, or do we go back into our own private campaign system and set up a, Mythic Legions Tactics, War of the Aether Blade, Kickstarter extended campaign, to where now you can just buy the stuff and it's part of it. Instead of a campaign that's already been funded, it's more of just purchasing or pre-ordering. So those are both in discussion right now. I know that we're leaning more towards our own system since we already built it and allowing people to extend. But there are things you have to consider from the campaign. You have to make sure that exclusives are exclusive. You can't offer everything the same way, and you can't make sure that everybody has the same access levels. So people who back the private get something that the public don't get. If you back the public, then we put it on an extended. The extended don't get everything that everybody else got. So there has to be this, balance of, okay, you're going to be able to back this stuff continuously, but at what point do you, cut that off, and when do you allow that extension to taper off or stop?
Yeah. So basically, how do you take care of that fan base and make sure the people who do hop on the early days are rewarded, right? And people maybe still can participate, but not at the same level or get the same deal, right, as the other people.
Yeah. So you always have to incentivize, like, hey, if you back now, you get X. If you don't, then you can get Y. We're never going to stop people from buying it. Obviously, it's a video game. You want to pre-order the video game. We're going to have Steam up and running to where you can wish list it and be able to pre-order it when it's available. Obviously, we're going to be, hopefully we'll unlock the Xbox One. It'll be on iOS and Android. So the goal is to allow people to continue to buy, but at some point you have to distinguish. The Kickstarter gives you it at X level. These other ones give you at Y.
Well said. Well, I have one more question for you, but before we do, where can people go to learn more about your campaign? It looks like you got 29 days to go here. Where can people go learn a bit more about this?
Well, the campaign itself has a lot of really good info on it. However, there's quite a few other podcasts and people who are doing breakdowns of the campaign. There's one called Mythic Customs that does pretty well. They can also go to sourcehorsemen.com, which is the Four Horsemen's main website. And there's a lot of information about the campaign and the action figures there. So Source Horsemen is the main site to find out everything else.
Very cool. And my last question for you is, if you could speak directly to the audience, and we can end on this note, if you have a final tip or word of encouragement or something that you think that someone who's just getting started in this process should know about, we can end on that note. Would love for you to share that.
Yeah, I would say the final note that I have is, being prepared, having the right brand, and making sure that your strategy is there. However, the other thing to note is you need to have fun. People can tell if your campaign is not fun. If you're out there just trying to do a cash grab, if you're out there trying to say, hey, just give me money, people can tell. You need to be authentic. You need to show that this is going to happen, but you need to have fun with it, because Kickstarters are about, hey, we're raising money to do something, entertainment, whether it is, but you need to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, it comes out in the campaign and how you write it, what you show, what you talk about.
Understood. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And good luck with your remaining days here when you're live. I know you guys are already crushing it, but wish you a lot of luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
What up? Salvador Briggman here. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Whatever it is you're doing right now, I hope that this episode jazzed you up. It got you excited. It got you in the right frame of mind to want to launch something and take some action. And if you're ready to take the next step when it comes to this journey, if you're ready to put one foot in front of the other to climb that mountain, and you're like, okay, I'm ready to do the climb, but I just want a little bit of a guide. I just want a little bit of help. And it doesn't mean anything if you need a little bit of help. I think that's so important to invest in trainers, in mentors, to help in people who have done it before, and it can help you out when it comes to your project. So if you want to speed up time and just kind of know what's beyond the next bend, am I even hiking on the right trail, right? Do I have the right gear that I need to surpass this mountain? Or do I need some snowshoes, right? Because we're going to run into the snow later up down the trail. If that sounds interesting to you, you can go to this link, crowdcrux.com/coaching, and you can book a one-on-one coaching call with me, with Sal. So that link is crowdcrux.com/coaching, crowdcrux.com/coaching. Book a coaching call with me there. and we can talk about your project intensively, and it can prepare you for that road ahead. That being said, thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time. Again, my name is Sal. Hope you have a good one.